Hey, I just did this a second ago, but then I started coughing a ton, so I'm just re-recording. Hopefully, I get through this without coughing into the microphone. If I don't, well, I'm not going to do it again. So, apologies ahead of time. Okay, I want to show some blocker effects. By the way, I'm showcasing the new logo. I just spent many thousands of dollars on this. I hope you like it. It was, top graphic designer. He told me that he was giving me a very good deal on this, so I'm excited about it. Um, yeah, it's the MS Paint Chic. Okay, so suppose we are looking at this board: Ace of Clubs, Ten of Diamonds, Five of Clubs. This is button versus big blind, single raise pot using 25% C bet. And let's suppose we are facing a raise, and we want to understand what are some hands that we're folding versus calling, and for instance, why is yeah, I don't know if there's anything here that's going to be super baffling. I mean, flush draws are calling, but imagine we see something like Ace Four of Spades is, or Ace Four of Diamonds wants to fold or something like that. Obviously, it doesn't. It's too strong. But just imagine for a second we see something like that. We say, hey, why is that happening? So, uh, enter Pious. So I have this feature called Pious Blockers. So this is you run Pious, you say, hey, I want to report blockers. Now, obviously, we didn't pass it which folder to look at, but we can do that. So, or which file to look at. So I'm going to go into my database. I'm just going to right click the file, and I'm going to this here copy as path, and this is going to go ahead and copy the path. Now, it also was saying I need a node ID, and node IDs are a little bit tricky. They're this internal PIO representation. At some point, I'm going to make it easier to use kind of like a higher level, more human interface. But for now, you can look. It's kind of a pain because you got to like type this out. But we can see R:0:C:B12:B50. And so I'm just going to type that out. R0C. So it's a check, and then bet, and then raise to 50. And I want to look at the blockers for this. Now, by default, we just print a graph out, and the bottom is the card, and then so the x-axis is which card, and then the y-axis is the the basically the equity shift that we're seeing. So, if I recall correctly, this means that by blocking their ace x, we're lowering their equity by 2%. Is that right? I honestly forget, but basically bigger is better, lower is bad. The so we can see that blocking an ace is really good. Blocking a 5 is also really good because we're going to be blocking their 2 pair and their sets. Blocking a 10 is good because we're blocking their 2 pairs. Blocking their like a 3 of diamonds, 4 of diamonds is bad. And we can look into this in more detail. So if you notice back up here, the cards to print, I can pass. So these double quotes, I'm just going to pass the different cards that I want to inspect. So let's see, why is 5 of hearts good? So say maybe 5 of hearts, we want to look at 5 of hearts. And then why is 4 of diamonds bad? And then how about king of spades, something kind of like in the middle-ish, right? King of spades is right here. Yeah, it's like kind of a neutral blocker. So let's go ahead and see like a per card printout for each one of these. So this prints out for each one. Let's, prints out the graph again. And then let's go to the top. So king of spades. Well, they're not check raising this a ton. But everything that they have is like 40% equity. So that looks like it's probably, kind of like medium strength draws. So if we come back here, let's look at their strategy and look at when are they check. So king 5. So it's bottom pair, right? And that's going to be, if we look at the equity of this, king 5 bottom pair, it's about 43% equity. So king 5, yeah, it's saying 44% equity. I think I said it was like 43.9. Yeah, 44% equity. King jack, so spade club. So we're King of spades, jack of clubs. So that's going to be a backdoor flush draw with the gut shot, and same with king queen. Right, we're seeing, if we look at the strategy, king jack and king queen with the yeah, you can't click it, but like this top right down here, like right where this would be, the top right, we're seeing king of spades, jack of clubs, and that's raising at some frequency. And we can look at the equity here, and that's 45%, 45.4%. I'm saying 45%. Okay, great. So we kind of understand what the blocker effects of, so this is out of positions range. So this is a report for in position range. If I have the king of spades, well, I'm kind of only going to be blocking these bluffy type hands. So we're not really shifting the equity a ton. Yeah. So we can see that there's a bunch of medium strength hands. And by the way, when we're in a polarizing action and we see a medium equity, that's typically going to be a bluff. We're not polarizing with medium showdown. Typically, sometimes we are. We'll see an instance here in a second. So how about the five of hearts? Now, remember, five of hearts was pretty high up on our blocker value. So we can see we have pretty good blocker effects for five of hearts. So let's see what that looks like. So in the five of hearts, right, we're seeing there's a little bit of 40% equity. So this is probably going to be like a king five sort of thing. Queen five of hearts. Yeah. King five of hearts. 8-5. Yeah. So we are blocking these. I don't have the weights of these. These aren't going to be super high because we can see that even though there's a bunch of these like kind of low equity hands, they're not super frequent. But then we also see that we have a bunch of sets and two pair, and those are going to be when we have a five of hearts in our hand. We're actually going to be blocking a lot of their value. They have both ace five offsuit and ace five suited, and then pocket fives. And then what about the four of diamonds? If we go back up, we can recall that the four of diamonds is actually not a good blocker. We're blocking a lot of their low equity stuff, and so we can see here. Well, we're blocking 6-4. We're blocking 4-3. These are backdoor 6-4 is like backdoor. It's like pure air. 4-3. It's a gut shot. It's a wheel draw, but it's also backdoor flush draw. So we're blocking these kind of hands. We're also blocking pocket fours with the diamond and 5-4 again, which is very similar to this. So we're just blocking a lot of junk and a little bit of like low equity pair type stuff. So turning the undercard into a bluff. And anyway, the last thing that we can do, so we've been able to print out individual cards. We can also print this out as a grid. Now, I added this because this doesn't really show patterns between ranks and suits. I mean, like you can kind of see like, oh, aces are good, tens are good, fives are good. But might be able to see this a little bit better if we print it like so. And so now we see, it might be a little bit hard to see this, the white on the bright green, but yeah, aces are a really good blocker. We can see that like clubs and low diamond are bad blockers. A bunch of stuff in the middle, these are intermediate blockers. They're not blocking a ton. They're not really, having it isn't really going to affect the opponent's equity. They're kind of neutral. Yeah, anyway, so this is this is the basic blocker effects. Now, one thing I could do at some point, and I don't have this implemented, but add in some like maybe how does this shift the equity realization? How does this shift EV? This is stuff that I could compute. I don't have it right now. But it would be a good thing to, because as we saw, even though we're blocking medium equity hands, sometimes those are high EV hands that are going to continue barreling on later streets. And so knowing, kind of getting a feeling of like, are we blocking draws that are going to be able to bluff us? Are we blocking value? That might be some more information that we'd like to get back. But from a purely equity standpoint, yeah, these are the blocker effects. And I thought this was kind of a cool feature. I didn't really like what GTO Wizard was doing. They just kind of have this single number blocker effect. I like having these histograms to really understand the profile of these are the kind of hands I'm blocking. And Pio 3, I think it's been updated, but I didn't like at first glance how Pio 3 was handling it, just because again, like it was a little bit more nuanced. It had good blockers and bad blockers, but it was still like a lot of the time you get these counterintuitive things, and it wasn't really telling you on like, unless there was like a polarizing action, the blocker effects in Bio 3 weren't telling a ton of information. Um, and if there's like a lot of like intermediate, like medium strength blocker stuff happening, like you didn't get any of that. And so I think there was a couple of questions in the Pio Discord early on that like said, hey, I've been getting some counterintuitive results. And I think this sort of approach, it's a lot more detail, right? Like it's not just a number. But it turns out that you can't really understand complex things with a single number. And so having multiple ways of viewing this, yeah, is nicer in my opinion. But it takes more work. And you got to use my janky ass command line interface. Anyway, this is the blocker effect.